You're not anxious. You're not broken. You're not too much. You're just someone whose brain refuses to let things be simple. And honestly, you've probably been told your whole life that's a problem, that you need to relax, that you're reading too much into it, that most people don't spend 45 minutes replaying a 2-sentence text before hitting send. But here's what nobody ever says out loud. Overthinking isn't a flaw in your wiring. It's a signal. And by the end of this, you'll understand something about yourself that most people spend their entire lives never figuring out. Picture this. It's a Sunday evening. The week is technically over. You should feel calm. Instead, you're lying in bed at 11:47 p.m. and your brain has somehow looped back to something you said at a work meeting 3 years ago. You remember the exact pause after you spoke, the way someone glanced sideways. You've reconstructed that moment 17 different ways and still can't decide what it meant. Meanwhile, the person you said it to, they don't remember your name. This is the world overthinkers live in. Not occasionally, constantly. Every decision becomes a chess match against hypothetical futures. Every conversation gets an autopsy. Every silence reads like a verdict. And here's what nobody tells you about that feeling. It's not random. It's not weakness. There is a deeply specific psychological reason your brain works this way, and it started long before you were old enough to understand it. Now here's where it gets really interesting. A study published in the Journal of Abnormal Psychology found that people who engage in repetitive negative thinking, what researchers call perseverative cognition, show significantly elevated cortisol levels even during rest. Translation: your body is physically treating your thoughts like actual threats. Your stress system doesn't know the difference between a real danger and an imagined conversation that went wrong. And it goes deeper than that. Research from the University of Michigan found that 73% of adults between 25 and 35 identify as chronic overthinkers, which means this isn't rare. It means you are not the exception. You are, quietly, the majority. But here's the thing. Your amygdala, the part of your brain responsible for detecting threat, is hyperactive. It's scanning, constantly. Like a smoke detector so sensitive it goes off when you make toast. That's not a defective smoke detector. That's one that was calibrated, by experience, to stay alert. The question is, what calibrated it? When you were young, somewhere between 7 and 10 years old, you learned something. Maybe it wasn't taught in words. Maybe nobody sat you down and explained it. But you absorbed it all the same. You learned that the world is unpredictable, that people's moods change without warning, that saying the wrong thing has consequences. Maybe you grew up in a home where tension lived under the surface, where you learned to read the room before you walked into it. Maybe you had a parent whose approval felt conditional. Maybe you were the kid who got laughed at once in class and decided, quietly and permanently, to think 3 steps ahead before speaking again. By the time you were 12, you'd become fluent in a language most people don't even know exists. The language of what if. What if this goes wrong? What if they misunderstood? What if I'm too much, or not enough, or somehow both at the same time? And in the 90s and early 2000s, the era so many of us grew up in, there wasn't a lot of room for that kind of inner complexity. You were supposed to be fine. Shake it off. Stop being so sensitive. The cultural message was clear. Toughen up, move fast, don't overthink it. So you didn't stop thinking, you just started doing it in secret. But wait, there's a darker side to this. Here's what's fascinating. The very mechanism that makes you an overthinker is also what makes you extraordinary at certain things. And this is where it gets interesting, because overthinking has 2 faces, and most people only ever see one. On the surface, it looks like paralysis. You cancel plans because you've already simulated all the ways they could go awkward. You don't send the email because you've rewritten it 11 times and it still doesn't feel right. You hold yourself back from opportunities because your brain has already calculated 17 possible failure scenarios. And this explains why you sometimes seem hard to reach, even to people who love you. You're not absent, you're processing. There's a difference, but from the outside, it can look the same. But here's the other face. You are also the person who notices things no one else does. You catch the inconsistency in the story. You feel the shift in someone's energy before they've said a word. You think of the question everyone else forgot to ask. You plan for the thing that hasn't happened yet. And when it does happen, you're the only one who isn't surprised. Overthinkers don't lack confidence. They have too much data. Every decision comes loaded with variables that other people simply don't register. That's not weakness. That's a processing speed that most brains can't match. And this explains everything about your relationships. Why you're deeply loyal but slow to trust. Why you love hard but second guess everything. Why you give so much thought to how your words will land before you say them. You're not cold, you're careful. And careful is a form of love. Here's the part that never gets talked about. Society has a very specific idea of what confidence looks like. It looks like decisiveness, speed, certainty. The person in the room who speaks first and never seems to doubt themselves. We've built an entire culture around that. The hustle, the boldness, the just do it mentality. And if you're an overthinker, you've spent years watching that version of confidence and quietly wondering why it doesn't feel available to you. While everyone else seemed to move through life on instinct, you were running calculations in the background, checking and rechecking, never quite trusting the answer. But what nobody says is that the person speaking first isn't always the person seeing clearly. Speed and accuracy are not the same thing. Confidence and correctness are not the same thing. Some of the most consequential mistakes in history were made by people who didn't think enough, who moved fast and broke things and called it leadership. Your way of moving through the world, slower, more considered, more aware of nuance and consequence, that isn't a bug in the system. In a world that rewards reaction over reflection, you are one of the few people still choosing to think. That's not something to fix. That's something to understand. What I'm about to tell you in the next 60 seconds reframes everything. The truth is, overthinking isn't anxiety pretending to be intelligence. It's not you being dramatic or difficult or unable to cope. It's a nervous system that was taught, through experience, that paying attention keeps you safe. It's a mind that learned, early, that the cost of missing something is higher than the cost of thinking too long. That was once true, and the part of you that learned it was trying to protect you. The invitation now, not the demand, not the pressure, just the gentle invitation, is to let that protector know it can rest a little, that you've survived, that you are, despite everything your brain tries to tell you at 2 a.m. going to be okay. So the next time your brain won't let something go, the next time you're 3 hours deep in a spiral about a conversation that's already over, try this. Instead of fighting the thought, ask it. What are you protecting me from? Because underneath every overthought moment is a person who cares deeply about getting it right, about not hurting people, about not being hurt. And that person, that careful, exhausted, brilliant person, deserves to finally understand why they are the way they are. You're not broken. You never were. You were just paying attention. If that resonated with something you've never quite been able to explain about yourself, you'll want to watch this next.